So, you didn't complete the Binding Coils of Bahamut and want to know what happens in the story that you missed out on. Well, I'm Captain Indifferent, and in this video, I'm going to give you the rundown so you can get up to speed, or if you just need a refresher. As this is a story overview, spoiler alert for everything that happens in Coils. At the end, I'll also super briefly go over some out-of-game information and a Shadowbringer spoiler, but I'll bring that back up when it happens. Let's descend into the Binding Coils of Bahamut. The Binding Coils of Bahamut starts off with Urianger giving us a message to meet with a mysterious maiden in Wineport. She is investigating an etheric disturbance and the roar of a primal that was heard after the victory at the Praetorium. The maiden turns out to be Alize Levieur, twin sister of Alphino. This is actually only the second time we've met her chronologically. She tells us that when the Lesser Moon Dalamud fell, it wreaked havoc not only on the surface, but also with the etheric flow of Eorzea. This created confluences of aether, think ley lines of intersecting rivers of aether. It also created massive subterranean caverns, which she wants to explore, starting with the uncharted cavern network beneath western Lenosia's Castrum Occidens. She believes doing so may reveal answers as to what really happened 5 years ago, when her grandfather, Louis Sois, attempted to seal Bahamut, and they both mysteriously disappeared in blinding white light. Descending into the Imperial exploratory site beneath Castrum Occidens, we come across a fragment of Dalamud, the Allagan-made satellite prison of Bahamut. Its fall wounded the Earth, and corrupted crystals have grown all around it. At the base of the fragment, we find a spherical drone, an Allagan automated defense system that was once part of Dalamud's internal defenses. After vanquishing it, we enter a huge cavern, wherein lies what looks to be a massive wing of Bahamut, held aloft by the corrupted crystals. Alize is curious as to how it maintains its physical form, as after being defeated, Bahamut, being a primal, should have returned to Aether. After clearing out some corrupted creatures and golems, we fight a dangerous serpent and descend further underground. We fight some more Allagan nodes and continue our descent, then activate some terminals in the Ragnarok, an Allagan starship that fell along with Dalamud, to allow us to continue downwards. We use the Ragnarok's drive cylinder as a makeshift elevator to continue our descent, fighting off waves of clockwork guardians in the process. When we finally reach the central core of the Ragnarok, it opens up into another cavern where we find the right hand of Bahamut. Luckily, it also seems to not be moving, as we are about the size of an insect comparatively. Approaching the palm, dragons suddenly appear and attack us. One of them has an odd device around its neck. After putting them down, we continue on to an Allagan terminal, which transports us to a control room of sorts. Alize activates the device while commenting about the contraption around the dragon's neck, theorizing that it must have been some kind of Allagan receptor, which may have allowed them to control the dragons. She expresses her concerns about that kind of power in the hands of the Ashgardians or the Garleans, before the whole room comes to life. The surroundings open up to reveal yet another cavern, where we find Bahamut's head and a massive pulsating crystal seemingly sustained by the Allagan machinery, revealing, to her horror, that the roar of the primal was that of the Dreadworm himself. Before we retreat, Alize spots her grandfather below, who seems to notice her, but he walks away, ignoring her calls in favor of following some armored figure. Exiting the cavern, we find ourselves in northern Thanalan, though we're not sure exactly why. We return to speak with Urianger, who muses that though the revelation that Bahamut still lives beneath Cartno brings many questions, we have never been closer to getting answers. Going over our experience, he thinks that the land near the corrupted crystals is not healing because Bahamut and the Allagan machinery are diverting the ether towards his regeneration. He has also spoken to Rambros and found that Dalamud was constructed to channel the energy of the sun into the Crystal Tower, with Bahamut as its living core. The Allagan devices that are sustaining Bahamut are called Ragnarok-class internment hulks. The energy they produce keep Bahamut immobilized while regenerating him, so that he cannot escape or die, but with his strength regained, he could likely escape again. Alize comments that primals require prayer to exist, but thinks that the Allagans found a way to simulate prayer, possibly also through the same energy that restrains him. They theorize that shutting down all 3 binding coils should dissolve Bahamut back into Aether. So it's time to go back into another fragment of Dalamud, this time located in the North Shroud. Before heading out, Alphino intercepts us to ask us to watch out for his sister, since he worries about her being obsessed with the shade of their grandfather. He wants her to find her own reason to fight, not just to fight for the realm because Louis Sois gave his life doing so. He also worries that she cares so much for their grandfather that it may get in the way of ensuring Bahamut's defeat, and she must find her own resolve before long. We make our way to the second coil of Bahamut along a seemingly broken pathway, which turns out to be an illusion made by the large amount of corrupted crystals and aether in the area. We fight our way through corrupted creatures and golems, destroying crystal clusters as we make our way to a hole in this fragment of Dalamud. The hole is guarded by a corrupted plant creature, which, of course, we dispatch. Making our way inside, Behind the first door, we come across the figure that was with Louis Soix in the first coil, an armored Garlean whom Alizé recognizes as the White Raven, Nael Van Darnus, Legatus of the 7th Legion, the one responsible for the Meteor Project which brought Dalamud down, bringing about Bahamut's arrival, beginning the 7th Umbral Era. Alizé is immediately corrected by Nael, stating that the one true deity named them Nael Deus Darnus, as his eyes glow red. Nael proceeds to eccentrically praise Bahamut and warns us not to defile his hallowed halls. We continue on, taking a transport while fighting waves of Allagan modules and chimerical creatures. We dispatch them before taking another teleporter. Then, we make our way through halls defended by more mechanical guardians. Finally, we make our way to an elevator, which descends into what seems to be the Riven Road, the place where Nael Van Darnus was defeated in 1.0, complete with Dalamud on the horizon. Here, we find Deus Darnus again, and as they begin to make good on their threats, Alizé attacks and knocks their helmet off, revealing a feminine face. Referring to Van Darnus as if they were a separate, male person, it seems Deus Darnus knows, or at least believes, that she is different. That she was born when Bahamut saved Van Darnus before he was returned to Aether, and Bahamut fashioned her as his champion of sorts. Strengthened by Bahamut, Nael transforms into a dragon-like being wielding her famed gun halberd, Bradamante, and puts up a hell of a fight. When she is finally felled, the surrounding Allagan machinery ceases to function, revealing that we are actually on a holodeck. Her form, reverted but fading, Nael staggers forward and seems to be lucid, as if no longer tempered, proclaiming herself once again as Nael Van Darnus and stating primals are filth. Alizé thinks that Bahamut released her from his thrall, something a primal has never done before. Alizé asks Nael to share with us what happened and where her grandfather is, but before she can share anything, she is struck down by a javelin of light. A spiteful voice demeans Nael before she returns to Aether, and Alizé mentions that she knows it to be her grandfather's voice, but he would never say such things. We continue on, seeing that Bahamut has continued to regenerate before Alizé shuts down the first Binding Coil. Before we have the chance to leave, Louis Soix arrives and attacks Alizé. He tells her to abandon her quest, as he will not abide any more attempts to sabotage the coils. He berates Alizé, and his eyes glow red before offering words of reverence to Lord Bahamut, threatening to kill us if we return. He leaves, and Alizé vows to free her grandfather's soul from Bahamut's influence. As we leave, we end up at Northern Thanalan again, before deciding to speak with Urianger yet again. He begins by confirming that Nael Van Darnus was most assuredly a man in life. Urianger has learned that the House of Van Darnus safeguarded the wisdom of Allag, and that is how Nael discerned the true nature of Dalamud, and sought to use it as a weapon. Not having access to the Crystal Tower made him resort to less refined methods, and in the process of reaching out to Dalamud, must be how he became tempered. Now we must disable the last 2 coils, but alas, Alizé is having trouble locating where the next entrance is. We check in with her assistants in Eastern Thanalan and Mordona, but they haven't had any luck. Urianger reaches out via Link Pearl and says to meet him in Northern Thanalan, as he may have found an answer. When we arrive, he explains that the reason we appeared in Northern Thanalan when teleporting out of the caverns by the Interment Hulks was due to there being an ethereal egress there. Like before, think of the Aether rivers that the Calamity formed, with the Interment Hulks being one end and Northern Thanalan being the other, so traveling through them will spit you out in Northern Thanalan. It turns out that Urianger, with help from Alphino, has thought of a way to use an Aetherite to travel into the caverns using ethereal flow, though not without some risk being involved. Before we depart, Alizé and Alphino get into a small spat where Alphino acknowledges that Alizé has found her resolve, but it is still inherited from their grandfather, not her own, as she cannot tell him why she desires to save Eorzea, other than because it was their grandfather's goal. Our first destination is the Interment Hulk in Eastern Thanalan, so we teleport via the Aetherite and end up inside with no issues, luckily. We fight through clockwork sentries which awaken the chimerical beast encased in the prisons here and defeat a powerful chimera at the end before making a frightening revelation. Imprisoned all around us are many, many dragons. Alizé wonders why the Allagans would hold so many here when they already have so many defenses. Alphino helps her along, and she realizes that the primal's need for prayer to exist and Nael's reference to Bahamut's beloved children are both answered by the dragons here. Imprisoned indefinitely with no hope of release, the dragons that summoned him a millennia ago sustain him to this day. They can do naught but pray for Bahamut to save them, so that even if Bahamut were to be defeated, the dragons here would just summon him back due to their constant state of duress. Still resolved to put an end to this, Alizé thinks that disabling the Interment Hulks will also terminate the captive dragons, allowing them to finally rest. Continuing on, we come across what seems to be a colossal model of Dalamud, complete with its own defenses. We vanquish them and get an inside look of how Bahamut must have felt, trapped inside of Dalamud for all that time, unable to do anything, least of all die. We continue on to find Bahamut still regenerating, almost his whole torso and an arm are complete, as well as a large portion of his wings. Before we can disable the coil, however, Louisoix intervenes. He continues to deflate Alizé's will before Alphinaud steps in and asks why someone who gave their life to defend the realm would prevent them from meting out justice. Louisoix then decides to give us a history lesson on humanity's so-called justice. Back in the Third Astral Era, the land of Mericidia was invaded by the Allagan Empire, who held nothing back in their effort to conquer the land. They were ruthless and unstoppable. The dragons prayed to Bahamut, first of their brood, and he was returned to life as a primal. He was, however, still defeated and made to serve the Allagan's twisted designs. Louisoix then likens his summoning of the 12 to stop Bahamut to the Mericidian summoning of Bahamut to save them from the Allagans. Why are they shunned while he is venerated? Humanity's self-righteousness, and as long as it remains that way, humanity will always be at odds with dragons. So Bahamut has decided to destroy all humans, since, as Louisoix puts it, man cannot find common ground between his own 2 feet. What hope have they to make peace with dragons? He then turns his tirade toward the twins, citing how they can't work together or see things eye to eye, even when claiming to fight under the same banner. Alphinaud steps forward and says while that may be true, a lecture on the evils of mankind falls short when delivered by Archon Louisoix. He wonders if he thinks this way now due to Bahamut's enthrallment, or because he has transcended humanity. Trick question, it's both. Louisoix reveals that his prayer did not go wholly unanswered, as he reveals his true form, that of the primal phoenix. And he is not a manifestation like Nael was, but a tempered primal. We do battle with him and claim victory, and after the flames settle, Louisoix appears again, now free of Bahamut's control. In the brief time the reunited family has together, they forgive each other for their failings and insolence, and Louisoix tells them of what really happened at the Battle of Carteneau. While the forces of Eorzea and Garlemald clashed, Dalamud descended, and Bahamut broke free, raining destruction across the realm. Louisoix attempted to summon the 12 to create a prison of Aether, but Bahamut's strength and fury was too much for it to contain. Having failed, Louisoix could only use the last of his strength to hope for the future and await death. All of the unspent Aether from summoning the 12, and the prayers of all of Eorzea, as well as his own, bestowed upon him the power of a primal. Using this power, he attempted to shield against Bahamut's catastrophic attack, Terraflare. The shield did not hold, but he put everything into one desperate attack, propelling himself skyward and blowing a hole straight through the Terraflare, and continuing on right through Bahamut. Bahamut's form and the Terraflare cracked and exploded with one final rain of destruction on Carteneau. Having thought Bahamut felled, Louisoix returned all of his Aether to the land to begin the rejuvenation of Eorzea. However, Bahamut still endured somehow, absorbing enough of the lingering Aether to maintain some semblance of his form, and enough of his will to prevent Louisoix from completely returning to the earth, much like Nael, and enthralled him in his weakened state. This also prevented the flow of Aether from returning properly, which is why the land remains warped and explaining the corrupted crystals. Bahamut took all of that Aether in, and was still only restored to the extent we saw after 5 years, even with the aid of Allagan technology. Such is the immensity of his size and power. Louisoix calls on us to end Bahamut's regeneration once and for all, as his existence poses a threat to human and dragonkind alike, as he would leave nothing for his brood to inherit in his wake. Louisoix disables the Interment Hulk and creates a portal to the last one for us. He has one last conversation with his grandchildren, tells them how proud he is, and wishes for them to find their own hopes and dreams. He also tells them that there are records of an art for one to summon a primal from the essence of its demise. Though he is not a real primal, he gives what essence he has left to them, as finally, he is able to return to the earth completely, and rest. Teleporting to the last Interment Hulk, the twins step forward to disable it, only for Bahamut to unleash a mega flare upon them. Reeling from the blast, Alizé shakes off the shock of despair as Bahamut charges another blast, shielding us from it. Alphinaud gets up and assists her, and their twin grimoires, gifted to them by their grandfather, do the fusion dance as they combine their power. They are able to use the power to repel the blast and propel us into Bahamut's burning heart, where we face off with Bahamut Prime. He throws everything he has at us, including what seems to be the physical embodiments of the Mericidian's prayers and pain. We even must weather a Terraflare before finally bringing him down. We return to the twins' side, and Bahamut offers no more resistance. Alizé finally shuts down the last Interment Hulk, and Bahamut, along with his crystal heart, disappear into Aether. Alphinaud lives up to his Reddit karma, saying he just put 2 and 2 together when figuring out Louisoix had become a primal. Alizé susses out that her brother wished to accompany her in case she lost her resolve and fell under his sway. He asks forgiveness, as he realizes he needn't have worried. They speak about what to do now with this newfound knowledge of Phoenix, and they resolve to keep it a secret. Summoning Phoenix again would be against Lubisois's wishes and Eorzea's best interests, so they leave things as they are. They motion to have the Grand Company seal off the fragments of Dalamud, and before departing, Alphinaud and Alisaie find some common ground. Alisaie returns to the Dalamud fragment in eastern Thanalan to say a prayer for her grandfather, Nael, the dragons of Mericidia, and those taken by the Calamity. She thanks us for our aid, and sets off to find her reason to fight for Eorzea, adding that she won't be outdone by Alphinaud. Thus ends the story of the Binding Coils of Bahamut, in-game at least. They release some more information in the Encyclopedia Eorzea. It turns out the reason that Nael Deus Darnus appears as a female is because she is, in fact, female, but was not born Nael Van Darnus. The real male Nael Van Darnus had a younger sister, Eula, who also joined the Imperial Army, but wanted to be a surgeon. It turns out Nael had died before becoming a legatus. He returned mortally wounded from a foolhardy mission ordered by their father. This hit Eula hard, and her sanity began to slip. She killed her father for his hand in Nael's death. She then assumed Nael's identity so well that apparently no one caught on or questioned it. Her first act as Nael was to publicly execute her father's officers and guards. Even when rumors spread that Nael had a hand in their father's death, the Emperor saw such potential in Nael that he dismissed it. The rest is history. Here's that spoiler alert for patch 5.55, the last pre-Endwalker quest. Not much has happened regarding the coils since, at least not that I can remember. The etheric confluences beneath Cartno literally just became MSQ relevant in the very last quest in 5.55, where Fandaniel tried to destroy them with the lunar primals, which would undoubtedly have horrible consequences. I thought it played out a little weird, with them supposedly being literal purple marker manifestations of the confluences, but, you know, magic. I'm no lore expert, but I think that's the biggest callback we've had to coils in the MSQ, though there were some parallels in Stormblood. I think we'll be seeing more or similar callbacks in Endwalker. I have some theories, but I'm going to save those for my Endwalker Crackpot Theory bingo card. That's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Perhaps join my Discord, I'll link it in the description. Please look forward to the Alexander raid video, and I will see you in Endwalker and on the moon. See you later, Warriors of Light.